Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to a new show that we're just producing for the very first time. You're watching 100 Yards of Football, and today, along with Bob Case and Darrell Evans, we're going to have a show called Baseball Legends of the Past. And today we're going to talk about a featured guest, somebody that you may not know a whole heck of a lot about, but you're going to learn about Casey Stengel. And one of the reasons that we have Bob and Darrell on the show is because the two of them collaborated and got together. And Darrell, if you don't mind, I'd like to share this before I turn it over to you. There are certain people, like my dad is 100 years old. He's just on the other side of the wall over there enjoying some lunch. And he knows a little bit about Casey Stengel, but there's so many people that know nothing and or very little. And so for the sake of memories and what he meant to the game of baseball, we're going to honor some of the guys from the past, people that you've either played with or known or have experienced something with. And Bob, this is obviously close to you because of your relationship with Casey over the last, 10 years of his life. He lived to 85 years old, and you got to be a part of that. So we're going to discuss this. But the memories and the family and the grandkids and some other people that just love baseball. We're going to talk about some people, and today it's Casey, that have had a part of baseball's history in a way that the three of us are just going to have some fun. We're going to enjoy it. We're going to share some stories that you may have heard before and some you may not know. But in the meanwhile, Darrell, you decided to ask Bob and tell us a little bit about the impetus behind this. You know, what was your reaction in trying to say, you know what, I've got some great memories, and wouldn't it be great if we talked about some of the guys that were really influential in and around the game that we had a chance to know in one way, shape, or form? Can you share some of your thoughts regarding that?
Well, I think that, 2 days ago we had the Hall of Fame baseball. And everybody wants to know about those guys. And it's impossible for them to know because we all have, everybody has different stories, everybody grows up differently. But then you go, oh, I didn't know that about him. I didn't know that. Oh, that was what I did. That was so. Bob and I were talking, and I thought, well, what the heck? How lucky are we to know some of these people intimately, friends, teammates. Bob worked for some of them, and they worked for him. And the one thing I always get is that when I go out in public, and especially go card shows or talking, I think they want to know about these people. The fans want to know. They're shy at first, they don't know, but they want to ask you. So this is maybe a way we can do that. We don't know everything about it, but this is something I want. I was just thinking about. I grew up with Hank and Eddie Matthews, and I got to be around them and teammates and everything else. And people loved them, but they didn't really know them. And I got to, and I just want to, if we can share all that kind of stuff. Because you know what? Every day, almost every day, I get 5 to 10 fan mail letters. Almost all of them are, can you sign a baseball card and send it back to me? Some it's 20 of them. And they all claim, like, I don't care. It doesn't matter how wonderful. What a wonderful thing for you to think of me. And then they always tell you the stories of what they were thinking when they were young, they were around, or their family. So let's just pass that along. That was one of the first things when I walked into the Major League Baseball clubhouse at 21 years old. It was always pass along what you learned here. Well, you can't do that because very often, I guess you got to wait till you get old. And, people kind of tend to believe me now. They listen to me. They don't question it. The press used to kind of, I guess, like, oh, we don't want to hear about that. I want to talk about these guys and make them more famous than they ever were, because they all, everybody tells, it doesn't matter who they all were part of people growing up. They were all part of people's families. So we're just going to talk about the families, and hope that everybody enjoys it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, just the idea behind the history of the game itself, and then you guys have gotten a chance to touch this. And Bob, there's nobody that's touched Casey as much as you were able to be around him during the later part of his life. You were his manager, so obviously there's some real personal things here for this specific show. But in the other ones, people that you've known over the years and gotten a chance to either meet in person or know people that know him, we're going to talk about a lot of other guys that are responsible for Casey's success and his friendships and his relationships with other players and people that are in and out of the game. I mean, those are some of the things that they're really intimate stuff that hardly anybody knows. And you got to be a part of this for over a decade.
Yes, Harper. Well, I actually met Casey when I was like 10 years old. So I really knew him most of my whole life. And I was a bat boy for the Brooklyn Dodger Rookies, which was managed by Lefty Phillips and Kenny Myers. And they played at Casey Stengel Field in Glendale. And I was the bat boy and the ball boy. And on that team was Larry Sherry, Norm Sherry, Don Drysdale, Al Norris. And it was a lot of fun. I'd play catch with Drysdale when I was 10 years old. He was my guy. And then Casey.
Is that all? I mean, are those the only guys they could muster and put on the field at the same time? How tragic for yeah, my God.
Oh no, they had all their top prospects. A guy named Al Norris that never made it to the big leagues, was a third baseman they talked about all the time. But Casey, this was in the wintertime, so they'd play every weekend at Stengel Field, and Casey would come down and scout the players, and that's when I first met him. And what a sweetheart of a guy. He, just to take the time to talk to a 10 or 11-year-old kid, he took us to a place called the El Vac, which is right across from Glendale College, and he would buy us pancakes, and ice cream at the Vac. It would take about 3 or 4 of the kids and take us over there when I was 12 years old. So, what I always said about Casey Stengel, if he didn't care what color you were, what nationality you were, what your status was in life, if you loved baseball, you were his friend. And I used to kid him. When he was older, I used to say, Casey, I don't know where we're going when we pass on, but wherever you're going, if they don't have baseball, you're screwed. And the bottom line is, he was just a great guy, and he was my mentor. He was the father and the grandfather that I didn't have, and he was the family I didn't have, and his wife Edna, who he was married to for 50 years. What a great marriage they had. I mean, you talk about a great marriage. He met Edna. He had a teammate named Irish Musial with the 1923 New York Giants, and Irish was going out with a girl, and Edna was his girl's best friend, and he met her at the Polo Grounds, and he had the seats in his backyard from the Polo Grounds where Edna was sitting when he met her. They pulled him out of the Polo Grounds, and they sat in his backyard by his pool in Glendale for his whole life. And, but it was just a beautiful marriage they had. She had a sense of humor. She loved baseball. She traveled with him for years, and everybody loved Edna. So, there was nothing about Casey Stengel not to like. I've always said I've only liked people that are not all here, which is why I like Darrell and his family. People a little bit wacky, and Casey was voted the greatest character in the history of baseball. I mean, from taking his hat off and a sparrow flying out of it, from flying in an airplane and dropping a grapefruit out of the airplane, and Wilbert Robinson, the manager, thought it was a baseball, and it splattered all over his face, and he thought he died. So, in other words, he was always behind pranks and stuff and pulling stuff off all his life. And people always, and they thought he was a clown, but he really wasn't. He was just a smart guy, liked to have fun. And, in baseball, I mean, when he was with the Brooklyn Dodgers and the Boston Bees, my favorite story is he told Warren Spahn when he was pitching for the Boston Braves, he asked him to throw at a guy, and he didn't throw at him, and he said, "You're gutless." And he sent him to Hartford. And Casey laughed. Casey and Spahn, we'd have dinner, and they'd laugh about this. He sent him to Hartford and said, "You're gutless." Spahn went on to go go to World War II, fight the Battle of Bulge, that bridge, that famous bridge thing they blew up. He won the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, the Medal of Honor, Warren Spahn. And then he came out at 25. He hadn't won a game at 25 and won 363 games, won 20 games 13 different times, pitched 2 no-hitters after he was 40. And Casey called him gutless. It was one of the funniest things we've ever heard. And Spahn's dad even approached Casey one time and said, "Hey, my son's gutless." His father, Spahn, used to tell me his dad would go up to Casey and have fun with him. But, there's so many great stories. And through Casey, I was fortunate enough to get to, for 10 years in Spahn's retirement years, handle all his speaking engagements and endorsements and everything. And what a great guy he was. But I got him a gig speaking at a doctor's convention. He got 10 grand back in the 80s. And you know how much money that was in the 80s? He said, "Bobby, what am I going to say to a bunch of doctors?" It was a doctor's convention. They loved him. They asked for him. He went back every year for 5 years after that because they loved him speaking there to a bunch of doctors, talking all his stories. But anyway, that's just one story. We could talk about Casey for 2 months. And Darrell.
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead, Darrell.
So where do you think he got? Where did that? I mean, all of a sudden, he just decided he was going to be himself, and nobody said anything about it. Look how he had to put himself out there, kind of like that. But look how it ended up. As beloved as maybe the Babe, everybody smiles when you hear about him. Everybody wants to know more about him. You were around him enough to kind of be like, I guess. How did that happen? How did he never had a filter? But everybody loved that. He didn't have a filter. We were all looking forward to that. Didn't we? We all wanted to be grown up and going, yeah. He was a great player and a manager, but what a great person he was.
100%. I mean, he started out. Now think about this. He went to dental school. He was from Kansas City, Missouri, and that's why the players called him KC. His real name is Charles, and they called him KC because he was from Kansas City. So that's where he got the nickname KC, and he spelled it Casey. But all the players said, "Hey, KC," because he was from Kansas City. So he started out as a dentist. He went to dental school, but they didn't make dental equipment for left-handed dentists. So that's why he got into baseball. And I always said if they had made dental equipment for left-handers, we wouldn't know who Casey Stengel is. He'd have been a dentist. But so the bottom line is he left dental school and he signed a contract, and he signed in 1910, and he broke in with the 1912 Brooklyn Dodgers. In his first game, he went 4 for 4 with the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1912. And, he had a 285 lifetime batting average for 14 years in the big leagues. He hit the first World Series home run in Yankee Stadium history in 1923. He had a home run in Yankee Stadium, the first one when he was playing for the New York Giants, the first one in the world history of the World Series at Yankee Stadium. So, I mean, his history goes back, on and on and on. He hit there's actually a poem, him going around the bases, hitting a inside the park homer. Old Casey run, or I forget how it went, but it was a great poem. But I mean, he's just been a part of the fabric of baseball. Anybody that knows baseball, Casey Stengel was baseball, as evidenced by the fact I called it the Triple Crown. He was on the cover of Time, he was on the cover of Newsweek, and he was on the cover of Life magazine, as well as Sports Illustrated many times in sport. But back then, a baseball player, there was only a few other ones. Mickey Mantle did that, Joe DiMaggio did that, and Ted Williams did that on the cover of all three. But very few other ones in the history of baseball ever did that.
Why did they put him on there?
Because he was part of the American fabric. He went above baseball. He went beyond baseball. So it's like
we don't even know. Yeah, we don't know why he was so loved before. I mean, he was a great player. And then what happened? How did that happen? He all of a sudden became this famous, and everybody Well, some people would say we tolerated how he acted because, Harper, we go into sports and we take everything serious and we got to do things. Then you see this guy having fun and making it fun for everybody else. And like, oh, wow, okay, we can be a little different. I guess that was what he was to the whole country.
Yeah. Oh, Darrell, I didn't know about it, you guys. How about, because I just kind of grown up with him. It was like you don't realize until when I was working with him, we'd be driving on the freeway and people would honk and wave at him. Yeah. I'm driving the car and he's sitting shotgun. We'd come up to a stoplight. People would get out of the car and come up and want to shake his hand or get his autograph at a stop sign. I mean, in other words, everywhere we went, he was the face. His name when I was working for him was as big as Mantle, DiMaggio. Stengel's name was like part of Babe Ruth, Casey Stengel, and he played with Babe Ruth.
That's the part that's so interesting, Bob, if you don't mind me saying so. I mean, I remember, and I'm 63 years old now, the old Casey Stengel. A guy that was had wrinkles, and he wore the uniform with all of the different logos, and we'll show a picture of that in a minute. I want to age him back. He was born on July 30th, 1890. Charles Dillon Casey Stengel, and in Kansas City, as you mentioned. He had an outstanding baseball career. There are so many interesting stories about the teams that he played with and winning World Series and getting to him. Bob, if you don't mind, the young Casey was a guy that was a good outfielder. Got a couple pictures of him here. Played with Boston in reverse order. He was with the New York Giants. He was with the Brooklyn Dodgers. That's where he started, right?
Yes, so 1912.
Talk a little bit about the early days of him, right? This is with Ebbets, right? The field is named after Ebbets. They had some disagreements about money and pay and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't an easy career, but as a right fielder and eventually as a manager, as a young man, he played with Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth and Cy Young and Walter Johnson. That's the part that amazes me, is that he was one of those guys and could fit in any locker room at any time and have a bunch of those guys put their arm around him and go, "Hey, Case, what's going on? How you doing, buddy?"
Absolutely. I mean, you think about 1912. He breaks in. He goes 4 for 4 as just a kid. I think he was 21, and he played for Wilbert Robinson, another Hall of Fame manager. That's the manager he broke in with, Wilbert Robinson, Uncle Robbie, they called him. And then Casey always told me his mentor, like Darrell Evans' mentor, was Eddie Matthews. Casey's mentor was John McGraw, his manager with the New York Giants. He loved, and he taught him. John McGraw was probably the first guy to platoon players, which is where Casey learned how to platoon players from John McGraw. And he platooned Casey. And Casey, one year, I think he had 360 for John McGraw. But the point being, he really liked him. They got along. And he was just a great guy. He learned how to play the outfield at Ebbets Field. He was showing players when the Yankees played in the World Series how to bounce, get the ball rebounds off the wall in Ebbets Field. He was showing Mantle. And I remember Mickey Mantle said to Casey, "You played?" He couldn't believe Casey Stengel actually played in the big leagues. Mickey Mantle when he was a kid, because Casey's showing him how to field the ball off the wall at Ebbets Field, because Casey played in that same field. So there's so many great stories, but just like I said, he was a colorful character. I never saw him big league anybody. I never saw him ever act like an asshole. We'd walk in a restaurant, and 1 second, everybody in the restaurant knew he was in the restaurant. It was like, and he would talk to people. He would never, people would come up as he's eating dinner and want his autograph, and he would never tell them to get out of there or anything. He was just a great ambassador for the game of baseball. I always said he was the greatest ambassador in the history of baseball, in my opinion. That's my opinion, but I was around him, saw how he interacted with the public. People would come up to his house and knock on the door on Grandview in Glendale and say, "Mr. Stengel, can I get your autograph? I'm visiting out here from Vermont." And he'd say, "Come on in." Pour him a drink and show him his trophy room and sit and talk to him for an hour and a half. Now, how many guys would do that to a stranger? That's the way he was. I took Darrell.
He liked doing that. He liked showing.
Darrell Evans' mom and dad loved baseball, right? So one night we're out in Pasadena at the Sawmill having dinner.
Well, yeah, Well, I think the two most. I'm sorry, Bobby. Go ahead.
No, I'm just
I
saying.
think
One
the
night,
two most proud moments. Yeah, no, you could tell the story, but the two most proud moments for me, for my parents, and because they love baseball, my whole family and everything. We'll talk about that, but when they met Casey and he came over to their house. Oh my God! They couldn't talk. They couldn't explain how they felt. It was better than meeting the president or anything like that. And they really, but we didn't know about him because I was young. They knew about him kind of when he was playing because they were teenagers and young adults. And apparently he was so loved and famous, but of course it didn't get out all over the country because because it wasn't the TV and radio and all. But apparently this guy had it for some reason. I was just looking at the pictures. It wasn't that he was physically imposing. So he must have been a hell of a smart player to do
well,
what he got.
Darrell, in 3 World Series, he played in 3 World Series and he had a 360 batting average in 3 World Series. That doesn't tell you the kind of player he was. 360.
Well, yeah, and they one of the things I tell you guys about how much it is to be one of the guys. You don't think of yourself and what you do, but then all of a sudden it's like you're welcome. And apparently he wasn't just welcome. He was an all-star. He was really a good player, and then he was the spokesman for baseball. I mean, you look at it that way. I think that's what I look at it. It's like, who do we remember back then? Yeah, Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, and all the players. But really, we can relate to Casey because he was not only back then, but he was in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And then his kid was Yogi, who apparently was just like him. So, and look, we all laugh when we think about Yogi. We know how great he was. I think it's the same thing with Casey. But for more generations, forever.
One of the things
that's why when somebody like that comes into your house, talks to your parents, welcomes them. I don't know if it gets any better than that.
The 14-year career, right, Bob? He had 14 years in the big, or 15. And he goes the World Series in 1916 with the Dodgers, right? The 21, which I just flashed, the 21 World Series they win with the Giants. He's been traded to Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, ends up in New York with the Giants for a couple of years. They win the 20, 21, and 22 World Series. So he's got 3 appearances as a player. Some guys never get any, right, Darrell? It's not everybody gets to go to the big dance. But he survives that. And then one of the other things that really fascinates me is that you mentioned Babe Ruth or Ty Cobb, and the game ended and they were done. Casey got into managerial stuff. He was coaching for a little while, and then he got the managerial role with the Brooklyn Dodgers and the Boston Braves. Not great success there, but eventually he's out for another year, and then he gets the Yankee gig, and everything changes with that. So talk a little bit first before we finish up with his playing days. Bob, you were going to say something about, what a good player he was, a right fielder, but, not an enigmatic guy, but he was an all-star. He played, he was good. He hit 280 for his career. He wasn't a power guy, but just what do you remember him recalling about his playing days of things that he did? And, he doesn't pat himself on the back very much, but he was a part of history in that 3 World Series.
Well, Harper, you got to remember, you say he wasn't a power guy. There were a couple of years, I think he had 12 home runs and everything, and this is the dead ball era when he played. So there wasn't, Frank Home Run Baker led the major leagues in home runs with 10 one year. So he was playing during the dead ball area, so he had power, and he had a 284 lifetime batting average, which is pretty damn good, and he was a just a great player, and he knew the game inside out. He studied it. He studied under McGraw. He was watching everything John McGraw did. He watched everything Wilbert Robinson did. He was fortunate enough to play for these Hall of Fame managers. And so how about this? He gets fired from all those major league teams, and he went to the Oakland in the Pacific Coast League and the Oakland Oaks, and he won the 1948 PCL pennant with the Oakland Oaks. And on that team, he had an infielder named Billy Martin. He had a catcher named Ernie Lombardi, a Hall of Fame catcher. They call him the old men of baseball. He won in Oakland, and the same guy that hired him with the Boston Braves, George Weiss, who loved Casey, hired him with the Yankees, and the headlines were, Yankees hire clown. Why would they hire this clown in 1949? Because he was known for taking his hat off and a sparrow flying out of his hat with the Brooklyn Dodgers. When he was with the Pirates, he went back to Ebbets Field and they were booing him. So there was a sparrow in the outfield. He put it under his hat, and when he went up to home plate, they were booing him. He tipped his hat and the sparrow flew away. So that was one of the things he was known for, and many of the crazy stuff back then, which you didn't see in a baseball field. But he was a great character. He loved to have fun. He loved to stay out and talk baseball. Hey, how about this? You guys know I've been married a few times, okay? My wife at the time, I would go out and have dinner with Casey, and I'd come home at 4 a.m. Do you think she thought I was Casey would say, come in and have a nightcap. So you think I'm going to say no to Casey Stengel? I'd go in and we'd talk baseball till 4 a.m. Now, do you think my wife believed I was talking baseball till 4 a.m? No, which is hence why I kept getting divorced. But the point being, the bottom line is, this guy loved baseball, and Darrell Evans' parents loved baseball, and they talked baseball. And Darrell met him in 1969. I took him to the Roger Young Auditorium in L.A. for the baseball writers' dinner and Darrell was on the dais, up on the dais as a rookie with the Braves in '69. And who was sitting next to him on the dais? Charles Dillon Stengel. And that's the first time they met. And then Casey followed Darrell's whole career. That's how his mind worked. Oh, your friend, Bobby, your friend. Do you see what he's doing? He said, hey, Bobby, your friend hit 40 home runs with Hank Aaron and Davy Johnson, blah, blah, blah. Casey read the box scores every day. He followed the game in his retirement years. So he followed Darrell's whole career because he knew their parents. He knew Darrell. And that's the kind of guy, he was always saying, hey, what? And then he would have me read the obituaries to him every time I'd go over to his house. Bobby, tell me what's going on. Because, he lost a lot of friends. But his best friend was Dutch Zwilling, Zwillind. And Dutch went to high school with Casey in Kansas City. Casey dated his wife in high school. And Dutch is the only man in baseball history to play for the Chicago White Sox, the Chicago Cubs, and the Chicago Whales of the Federal League. And he led the Federal League in home runs one year with 15. There's Dutch right there. He was a pallbearer at Casey's memorial with me, and a great guy, and probably Casey's best friend in his life and longest friend. Like Darrell's my longest friend, and Dutch was Casey's longest friend. You know what I mean? They were together from high school and all the way to the end. And Dutch was just a great gentleman, just a classy guy. Dutch scouted for the Mets for years. He scouted Darrell Evans at PCC. He scouted this team, scouted that team. He scouted everybody.
Isn't it amazing? You were talking about when I first met him. I was trying to think about that before, but of course you remember. I was so intimidated. Not in a bad way, but in such a. I mean, it was an older gentleman, which back then was instant respect. But then was like, well, I respect him for. Gosh, I didn't even know he was a great player. I knew he played, but I didn't know. And then he was the face of baseball in a lot of ways, and it was all about fun. It wasn't serious. Of course, talk baseball and asking questions, but he expected us to know what he knew. And he was just one of those guys. That's when because when I got to baseball, you were expected to know everything. There wasn't any excuses. I mean, and I was lucky enough to grow up that my parents made me memorize the rule book when I was, I don't know, 10 years old.
Hey, Harper, this guy knew more. Darrell knew more in high school. His sophomore year of high school, he knew more than most major leaguers do today about fundamentals and stuff. And I mean that. This guy, he didn't say 2 words, but he knew the game inside out because it was osmosis. Charlie Deal, the last surviving member of the 1914 Boston Braves, who lived in Pasadena, said he saw Darrell's mother bringing him to Darrell's mother was a professional baseball player, saw Darrell's mother bring Darrell to the baseball games in diapers and feeding him with a bottle at the ballpark. So Darrell literally grew up with his dad played, his uncle played with Stan Musial in the minor leagues in the Cardinal system. It was the pitcher, Bob Evans. His grandfather, Carlos Salazar, or Dave Salazar, was the first guy to pitch in the Pacific Coast League for the San Francisco Seals and played in Mexico, played in front of the president of Mexico. The whole family was baseball. And I've always said if Darrell had been president of the United States or an academy, they were more proud of him for being Darrell than anything else he could have ever done. And that's the way his family was. And it was just, I love that every time you go over there, his mom had the game on the radio. And Vince Scully interviewed his mom, which I think was, Ellie loved Vince Scully. His mom loved Vince Scully.
She didn't say much. Let's put it that way.
He interviewed her. We're trying to find
her. Yeah. Who could say that?
Did a pregame interview with Eleanor Evans, a former base, and Darrell's dad. We used to kid him because Vince Scully would always say every time Darrell goes and gets in a batting slump, he goes to his mom for tips, and Dick would be sitting there just shaking his head because we'd kid him about it. Yeah, and how about on one of Darrell's bubblegum cards, they had a cartoon in the back, like they used to put the cartoons, and there's Darrell's mother was a professional baseball player, and his dad's just sitting there shaking his head.
What am I, sliced potatoes? Come on now.
Well, you know what I got? I didn't have to wait for my dad to come home to talk about what happened. My mom was part of it. And she was smart. She knew how to play, of course. And he was more, my dad was more demanding, not yelling, not anything else, but I hated to disappoint him because I knew that look. You know what? He didn't ask me how many hits I got or anything like that. Did you play the game the right way? Did you do this? Did you do that? My mom was more excited about, oh yeah, you guys won and we did good and all that kind of stuff. She was more forgiving. My dad won. But so Casey was, when I got to meet him, he was an extension at time all that. You know, apparently everybody loved him, and he was an inspiration. Not just, well, of course the players loved him, but everybody else loved him.
It was so easy to really enjoy.
So it was. You're in the right place at the right time. You get opportunities, and you can't miss them, which I think is a big part of success. Is, you know, we all get opportunities, but some of us don't see them in time, or we pass them up or whatever. All the ball players I know, and especially the guys that played before, rode the buses, did anything, didn't make any money, just for the love. So that was always out there, and it seemed like, I guess I can look back now and go, who was the guy that I want to be like him? Like you said, Bob, you could be a little crazy too.
Oh yeah,
and have fun doing what you're doing. So I'm the one regret is I didn't get to sit with him at my parents' house on the floor talking baseball with him. He was looking at a wonderful, awesome thing.
How about Casey spent an hour looking through Darrell's mom's scrapbooks, looking at every page, seeing the pictures.
Who would do that?
Yeah. But the other thing is, think about this. I read a letter to Harper the other day from Ty Cobb, a 4-page letter, handwritten letter from Ty Cobb to Casey Stengel. And all through the letter, all he did was say, "You're the greatest manager. How much what you did in the '58 World Series as a manager, I've never seen anything like it. You're the regular of winning." He was so humble in the letter. "I'm sorry to take your time with this lengthy, long letter." He goes. I read the whole letter to Harper. It's an amazing letter, though. How much Ty Cobb he played with him and against him, but how he was complimenting him as one of the great managers in baseball at that time, and how what he had done was remarkable, and how he was an old school guy, and how he was shaking his fist in the dugout. He talks about it, how he saw him on TV shaking his fist when they were down 3-1 to the Yankees, and they came back and beat him 4-3. So, it's when you see letters like that from Ty Cobb, who, by the way, was not prejudiced, and you'll see it in the letter when he says to Casey, "I love that fine color boy you have playing, which is Elston Howard." In other words, the players loved Cobb. The media made him out to be an asshole, and the players loved him. I can just tell you that because I knew a lot of them that knew him and played. Charlie Deal broke in with Ty Cobb with the 1912 Detroit Tigers before he went to Boston. And he and Cobb exchanged letters and correspondence. Charlie was a .257 lifetime hitter, but Cobb loved Charlie Deal. And he loved Fred Haney, who played with him with him. Fred was later a manager of the Milwaukee Braves, but Fred played for Cobb with the Detroit. He never forgot the players that played for him, and he loved them. So, he loved baseball, and he was just a badass player, but he wasn't the mean guy that everybody makes him out to be. And I went to the head of the Black Museum interviewed me about Cobb, and I'd met him once when I was a kid, but I knew about him from all the players that played with him, and I told them, and they were very interested to see that I said he was not a bigot. That's an overrated bunch of baloney, So for whatever reason, he got that tag, but it wasn't true. He used to sharpen his cleats and all that stuff. It's all overrated hype. But the bottom line is,
Can you imagine that? Somebody sitting in the Harper, how about that? Can you imagine sitting in the clubhouse walking in and somebody? Of course it didn't happen. We all know that. Nobody would put up with that. Something would have happened. But it's perpetuated. I guess you asked me why we want to do this thing, so we can get all that out there that it wasn't really like that. It was a camaraderie. One of the things that I love so much about playing baseball, I got to see the whole country. I got to live in all these different places, not just reading about them, not having somebody's opinion about them. I was actually there, and they were out there rooting for strangers. When I went to Atlanta, they used to. My neighbors used to call me a Yankee. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, because I wasn't from the South. And then it was like the fans weren't calling me a Yankee. They were calling me, "Hey, nice going for us." So I got to see that, and I guess we need to spread that back. People are different everywhere. By the way they speak, maybe, or their accent. But that's it. They all love the same thing. And, they have to put up with somebody's opinion. Can you? I just never imagine. How could you put down somebody like Babe Ruth? For a while it was that way. Like I said, they made movies about him. All the movies about him, except a couple, were that he was a buffoon. And nobody calls him on it. And, so I guess that's what we're doing. Same thing with Ty Cobb. Are you kidding me? The guy played, 24 years? And nobody's going to, if he did any of that stuff, they wouldn't put up with it. Of course they wouldn't. But it makes for good press, I guess. And it's
I
wrong.
got to say, Harper, through baseball, I got to tell you, baseball is like better than a religion for me because through baseball, I didn't come from a very good family, and Darrell Evans' mom and dad, while he was playing all the years he was gone, they were my family. They were my family. Darrell's mom would have me over for dinner, and I was not the best. I was drinking all the time and everything, and they didn't ever condone me for that. They when I got sober, Dick was around when I got sober, and he said, "I'm so proud of you for not stopping drinking." That was near the end of his life. He said that to me, and I'll never forget it. Chokes me up every time I think about it. But the point being, they were the family I never had, and Casey was the grandfather and the father I never had. So through baseball, and Darrell's the brother that I never had. Through baseball, I've had all these great relationships that have the best friends in the world through sports and baseball, And I'm going to show you a picture of Darrell's dad that's one of my favorite pictures. This is a picture in 1973, Darrell's dad, Dick Evans, Darrell, and myself. And I'm going to show it to you right now. That's at Dodger Stadium in 1973.
Third base.
And I signed it to you, Bob. What are memories?
Are you kidding? What
that
photos
you
are the best
can't
thing?
even imagine. Like you're saying the same thing. You can't ever, even in your mind, it's like people ask me, "Oh, when did you know you were going to be a major league player?" I tell you, I didn't know until they gave me the uniform the first time, and then I had to perform like one. That was really scary. I look back at one of the things I laugh about is that I was a typical rookie. I had to earn my way through it. I got to the big leagues and I didn't play, and I didn't complain. I was excited and everything else because I got to see how good those guys in front of me were and how experienced they were and how consistent. So when I finally got my shot, when I got a chance to play every day, they freaking put me hitting third in front of Hank Aaron. They didn't put me down hitting eighth or ninth, where it was like, hey, just go out there, come on, you'll be okay, get some experience. No, they put me right there. And if I wouldn't have had somebody like Eddie Matthews or Hank Aaron to tell me what I was supposed to be doing, I would have not known. But then it was like they came to me and said, hey, this is an honor. This is something we believe in. We believe in you. You do what you can do because we see it, and everything's gonna be. And you'll be in the spot. What am I supposed? How am I supposed to act? Well, listen. Hitting in front of Hank. Well, either get on base for him, or hit the ball at the ballpark, knock yourself in.
Yeah.
And
move the runner,
right?
Like,
That's
easy.
Hey, Harper, you know what I want to say? Harper, Darrell Evans, I'm going to tell you this. Now think about this. What do Darrell Evans and Casey Stengel have in common besides being big leaguers for most of their life? I'll tell you what it is. They shared their ride with their family, friends, and fans. They shared their success with their family, friends, and fans. I talked to Harper yesterday about how I never liked arrogant people. I still don't. Even if they're great, I don't like arrogant. Hank Aaron was not arrogant. So why would certain other people be arrogant? You know what I mean? I can't stand that. And what Darrell wasn't arrogant. Casey wasn't arrogant. In other words, when I say they shared, Darrell never saw him refuse an autograph. I'd see 1,000 people around him. 1,000 at one time in San Diego, over 1,000 people mobbing him. Signed every autograph, unless he had to go somewhere in a hurry or something. Casey Stengel, the same way. I'm going to tell you a story. One day, this is a Casey Stengel story. He would call me up on the phone, and he wouldn't say, "Hey, Bob, it's Casey. What are you doing right now? Are you busy?" He'd call me up, and I'd say, "Hi, hello." And he'd say, "Pick me up at LAX at 11 p.m. Slam. That was Casey. Okay. So I knew his voice, obviously. So I go down to LAX. Now, this is an amazing story. I pick him up at 11 p.m. at night. I go to the tarmac, he gets off a plane. There's 100 kids waiting for him. How they knew he was there, I have no idea. He sat there as an old man and signed every single autograph for all the kids waiting there. They had pennants and bubblegum cards and baseballs and all that. Signed every autograph. And as we're leaving, I said, Casey, does that bother you? And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, Bobby, they are as much a part of baseball as the peanut and hot dog salesman, as the sports writers, as the groundskeepers, as Joe DiMaggio, as Babe Ruth, as Mickey Mantle. They're as much a part of baseball. Without them, I wouldn't have got paid to do what I love doing for my whole life. And do you think I ever forgot that? When I see these people snubbing kids, these jerks, I think of that all the time. And Darrell was exactly the same way. Exactly the same way. So they shared.
Well, he was one of the idols.
Yeah.
He was how you figure out how to do things, right, Harp? You watch the guys before you do it. Or the ones on the other teams. And we all look and go, wow, how's he doing that? Okay, I'll go figure that out. Maybe I'll ask his teammate, or maybe I'll ask him. And Casey was accessible. We didn't even have to. We didn't really have to ask Casey Stengel a question. He was the one that was going to talk first. And when you see that and you look at him when you're coming up and when you're young, and you know, he's going to tell you exactly what he thinks, and you're going to have to figure that out. I was lucky enough to have that same way in my family, because they were so smart about baseball. Like read learn the rule book, learn all the rules, know this, because if somebody questions you, or if this came up in a game, you better know it before it happened. Casey was that instant thing. He'd talk about stuff that you go, what are you talking about? He shouldn't have run on this ball. He shouldn't have done that. He was lucky. So he was, to me, and I know it wasn't on myself. He was an example. He was that guy that my parents and everybody else told me, hey, find out who everybody admires and watch why. Not because what they say, because what they do. And Casey got everybody's attention and told everybody how. We played the game. He played the game 150 years ago. Old school, like it's supposed to be played.
And you know the other thing I want to say,
we're trying to change the game for what? For the better? No, not at all. It's like the guys who used to play. Yeah, I hear it all the time. Hey, no, I don't watch the games very much anymore because it's a different game. And then the people playing now are the ones that didn't play, but are telling us how to play. Go, no, we're making it better. It's what the fans want. Really? I know that's not true. So it's a fight always, and you're always trying to find somebody to emulate, somebody to be like, somebody that maybe you can read about or whatever they said in a certain situation, or be lucky enough like me and Bob to be able to meet this guy, talk to this guy, and he had the answers to everything.
Hey, Harper, let me just say this. The other thing I want to say about Darrell and Casey, I didn't have a lot of self-esteem when I was a kid, but Casey introduced me to all his guys he played with. Babe Herman, who's the all-time great Dodger hitter with a .393 lifetime average batting average in 1930, hit .328 in his career. Great hitter, was Casey's neighbor and best friend. I met Babe Herman. I met Charlie Deal. And Charlie Deal was connected with the Evans family forever, okay? And Charlie Deal, I used to go over to his house. Instead of being in bars hunting for girls, I'd go over to Charlie's house I'd buy him a pint of tapioca pudding at Gert Meanian's Market on Colorado Boulevard. He loved tapioca pudding. I'd take it over to his house. He would sit and talk baseball with me for hours about the 1914 Boston Braves, about his manager, George Stallings, who didn't wear a uniform. He did not wear a uniform. He wore a hat, and he said he would sit during the game with the Boston Braves and say the rosary beads. He was a Catholic. And he said if somebody made an error, he'd say, "You goddamn effing blah, 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 blah," with the rosary beads in his hand. The players would laugh like crazy because he's got the rosary beads and he's swearing at the players, okay? Then he was allergic to pigeons, and the opposing team would put pigeon seed in front of the dugout where the Braves were. So the whole game, the pigeons are there eating the pigeon seed just to piss off George Stallings. But I mean, I would sit and listen to. I knew the whole starting lineup of the Boston Braves. I knew about him playing with Johnny Evers and Rabbit Moranville and all these great ball players. And how about this? I'd be drinking. My alcoholism was bad. He would take care of me. He would put a blanket over me on the couch. He would get coffee and instant coffee and make it for me. He made oatmeal for me. He was always never, ever. I'm going to show you this picture. I just got this. This says it all. This is a picture of Charlie with the Boston Braves. I want you to be able to read that. Can you read that, Harper? Read that, what he said.
I don't have my glasses. To my best friend, Bob Case. Is that right?
Yes.
Stay out of the bar rooms and be respectable. Best of luck always. Charles A. Deal, 9-3, is that 1996? 1914 Boston, is that the Braves? World Champions?
1914 Boston. It was 1976. But, that picture, and then this is the picture.
Put me on the spot, Bob. I got to put my glasses on and get real close to the camera.
This is a picture of Charlie Deal.
Surprised you can read that. That's good.
Well, yeah.
That's Charlie Deal, myself, and Hall of Famer Harry Hooper from the Boston Red Sox, Harry Hooper and Wilbur Cooper on the far side. That's Wilbur Cooper, Charlie Deal, Harry Hooper, who was a Hall of Famer from outfielder from the Boston Red Sox, and Wilbur Cooper, who should be in the Hall of Fame.
You're a giant compared to those guys. All of them are little guys.
Are you kidding? Ask Darrell Evans about the dugout in Tiger Stadium. Tell him, Darrell, about the. You'd have to. It was made for guys 5'8".
The dugouts are, yeah, we didn't realize how small guys back. I guess a lot of them. And so they made the top. When you're sitting in that, you're sitting in there. There's about 3 or 4 inches to the top of the cement top of the dugout. And of course, every time something happens, you jump up. And you hit your head on that freaking cement. And depending on how great the play was or excited, you could almost knock yourself out. So I still have this little knot here, even though I only played 5 years in Detroit. But so many of those other places, so you're like going, so physicality, which we count on now, kind of wasn't that big back then. Sure, there was some big guys, of course. But it's like you in football. Now everybody's a little different. Man, never wore a helmet in the but keep it knocked out. But and one of the things, another thing, I remember going to Tigers game. I had never been to the American League until I became a Tiger. So when I went to Tiger Stadium, it was all new. It was great. It was one of the perks of being in the American League because all the old stadiums were still going. So I was going to get to play in all those old stadiums. Something you dream about when you're growing up. Oh my gosh! I wish I could go to Fenway. I was out there on the field doing that. And I remember going over and seeing one of my buddies after a game at Tiger Stadium. I'm a Tiger. He's on the other team. I go over to meet him in the other clubhouse. I walk in there, or I walk up to the door, and it says visitors clubhouse, no visitors allowed. So it was pretty confusing to go, okay, this is where you're supposed to come in, but you can't come in because you're a visitor. And I realized how these guys had to go through all of this so much harder than we had it. And I remember the best thing. They never bitched. They never complained. They felt good about having to go through something so hard. So we loved being around them because they expected us to attain that and not have this excuse for not doing it. So I never learned excuses. Excuses weren't any good. Nobody should have them. Because everybody in front of you and everybody behind you is going to have. So that's why we gravitate to these guys that did it back in, I don't know, 1912, Bob. Did they have trains yet?
I think they did.
I don't know. You know, the train ride was only, whatever.
Covered wagons, right?
And it wasn't their own train. They were riding on the public train. And you know, I had to get when I first came in. I went to the Texas League playing. Today it's in Fort Worth. It's 100 degrees. I came in and had to play the whole summer between I was with Freeport and then all the Texas League teams, all 8, 10, 12-hour bus trips on a bus that didn't have air conditioning. The air conditioner was pulling down the windows at the top and doing an 8 or 10-hour bus trip, get off the bus and go play. But we couldn't complain.
Did you have a wool uniform that went down?
What were they doing?
Did you have a wool uniform, Darrell, that went down to
Of
almost your wrist?
course. And we had one uniform.
Yeah. I have his flannel jersey right here.
You had to sew them up or get somebody else to sew the damn thing. That's why I grew up hating the Dodgers. I hated the Dodgers. I grew up in Southern California. You know that, okay? But they didn't come out there until I was 12 years old. I was already a big Braves fan and a big Tigers fan. I got to play for them, but I was a big one. Baseball cards, the whole bit, picking the best guys. All of a sudden, we get the major league teams come out, and it was like 5 years later, I signed actually Kansas City A's, but then I got to the Braves, who were in the same division. They were my favorite team. And I got to play for the Braves, and I got to hate the Dodgers even more. And then I got traded to the Giants, and I got to hate them even more. It was great because this probably might not make sense to a lot of people. Because in the minor leagues, we only had one uniform. One home, one on the road.
Harper, how about
and the Dodgers had every day the Dodgers had clean uniforms in the minor leagues and thought they were hot shit strutting around and all that crap.
Hey Harper, how about
to this day?
Darrell hit 7 home runs against the Dodgers in 1972 or 3. It was one of those 2 years. He had 7 home runs against. Does that tell you what he thought of the Dodgers?
You couldn't hate him any more than that, right? Every time you come up to the plate, you wanted to do some damage.
That wasn't enough. But you know what the thing, but think about it. And the great thing was all my family was there. They were pretending they were rooting for me, but they were Dodgers fans. So as soon as I stopped playing, they started rooting for the Dodgers again. They lied to me all this time to get me to give them tickets to come to the game, and you know, and I did all that kind of stuff. And then they pretended that they're back to being Dodgers fans.
Amazing. Hey, Bob, do me a favor. Tell the story about Casey and the respect. If you're in the encyclopedia, what did that mean to Casey?
This is one of the funniest things ever. They used to have, now because the computer, they don't make them anymore, but every 4 or 5 years they'd have this big, thick Macmillan encyclopedia. Darrell's dad, Dick, had one. We'd go out drinking all night. We'd come home. He'd sit in that rocker and he'd pull out the encyclopedia to check out what we were talking about that night. It had every player. If you went in the outfield for one pitch and came out of the game, didn't even at bat, you're in the encyclopedia. You're in the encyclopedia. So every player that ever played, so somebody would say to Casey, "Oh, that guy only hit 150. He's a HS player," and Casey'd say, "Stop! If his name is in the encyclopedia, he was a great baseball player for one day." To be one of 10,000 men in the world, to be in the big leagues for one day, you were a great player. And he was 100. Hey, how about in Southern California, if you made the high school team, you're a great player because there's so much baseball out here. But to be in the big leagues, when I was growing up, they didn't want to be a football player. You were an NFL guy for 11 years, Harper. All my friends wanted to be baseball players. That's all they wanted to do. And that's before the big leagues were here. We had Steve Bilko in the Coast League. But the point being, everybody wanted to be Steve Bilko or R.C. Stevens that played, the black guy that played for the Hollywood Stars. We all had the Stars and the Angels. It was a big deal. But the point being, baseball. And Casey was right. He was 100% right. You know, if you're in the encyclopedia, that meant you made the big leagues. Even for one, I have respect for anybody that played the game, whether it's Little League. I love that people played the game, and that's what I love about America. Almost everybody you've talked to, it's the fabric of America, either played softball, women played softball, little kids played Little League, little kids, they played some form of baseball. I used to play over the line all the time, every summer. It only took like 4 guys to play over the line. But we had a ball, and it's like it's a different world today because you got the computers and you got cell phones and you got this, you got that, you got, you know, the players don't know the fundamentals. They know how to. All they talk is about is war. The only war Darrell and I ever knew was the Vietnam War. You know, so all these stats about war and this and that. By the way, Darrell has the highest WAR of almost all the third basemen. He doesn't know that, but I know that. But the point being. You know, it's just a different world, and I'm so grateful I grew up when I did and had the friends I did. I mean, just through Darrell. Now, think about this. My friendship with Darrell, do you think I would have known Hank Aaron? No. Do you think I would have known Eddie Matthews? Maybe, but not like I did because he was Darrell's manager and coach and idol. But you know, and he liked to go out and have a few cocktails with me. But I mean, the guys that Darrell introduced me to, Phil Necro and Joe Necro, who were my clients, that Darrell introduced me to.
And we had Dusty on the show. Dusty was standing on deck with Darrell on first base during the day.
Yeah. Dusty, we had Ralph Garr on the show, his teammate in Atlanta also. The Gator.
You know, baseball is gotten back, I think. You know, it's always been, not always, but football is more popular. Does it really matter? And plus, if you add up all the minor league games that people go to, all the games that they listen to on the radio, to this day, every day. So, you know, the major leagues and the NFL, and those are all great. But it's what you do before. I mean, you can't realistically think you're going to be one of those people without going through the love and seeing the love from everybody else. That's why Bob, we talk about this all the time. The love. I try to get him to tell, he knows so much more than me because he's been through with not more people, but more people diversified. And they'll talk to him but when I come around, they may not talk about it. But we talk about baseball in particular, don't mean to belittle anything else, which is not the case. It's like we love seeing people happy and enjoying what they do and being super successful where we can't even have an idea what that takes. So this is one of the reasons why we're doing this kind of a series. We're going to show people that it was this way all along, and we kind of missed it, But isn't it kind of cool for it to come back? Because I tell Bob every day, I get that 5 or 6 fan letters, fan mail. They want my autograph on it most of the time. But they always talk about baseball and how great baseball is and how, it's being associated with baseball. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So
absolutely.
It's going back to who started this? How did this happen? How did we love it so much? And I got to go around the country and see, oh man, it's pretty cool. But some places you have to win to get recognition. But they pass up the great athletes that they got around because they may not have won, so they don't get it. But now we get to do it. And Casey was one of those guys. I mean, going back to somebody that played Charlie Deal, that lived in, a mile from us and was around, but nobody, he wasn't treated like Casey. But you look at him, you go, oh my God, look at this guy. He's got more knowledge than anybody else I know. So it was easy to get it out of Casey and people like that. And then you realize, man, people really do love it. It would be fun to be able to do that. Stand out on the field in Dodger Stadium, just about ready to sweep the Dodgers, who, I love them. But we're in Dodger Stadium in front of my family, friends, everything else. I'm wearing a Giants uniform, and we're going to sweep them. It's the bottom of the ninth. We're going to sweep them and tie them with a week to go in the season. And I'm with 55,000 they had out there every day. Well, we got these runs in the top of the ninth for the third day in a row, and I ran out to third base between innings, and it was silent. 55 thousand people. Quiet. We just quieted them down. I'll never forget this. I'm standing out there in third base, and I'm listening to Vin Scully, who I grew up listening to every single night, try to describe what it was like. Where it was complete silence, where we had just shut them up finally. Or kind of, but we still had a week to go. We ended up, they beat us the next Saturday, knocked us out, and we beat them on Sunday. Millions of people went through that with us. But I got to sit out there with complete silence because everybody took the radio to the game back then.
Yep.
And I got to listen to Vin Scully try to explain what happened. It was a surreal thing and something I'll never forget and something I could never imagine. So baseball was the talk of the town all the time. It still is, and just like all the other sports go along, and of course everything others. Yeah, some people like the Knicks. They don't like them too much anymore.
Hey, Harper, you got to hear this story.
They don't care. They certainly care about the Dodgers.
Harper, I got a story for you. You got to hear this one. Darrell Evans was visiting me, and we were out having dinner. Okay, just Darrell and I think. My wife is in Europe or whatever. It was just the two of us. We came home from having dinner. He's spending the night here. And we turned on, I had this big TV in the living room. This is, in the late 90s, I would say, 2000. And we turned on the TV, and they're interviewing. It was hilarious. There's Darrell on the couch and me on the couch. They're interviewing Kirk Gibson. It was on ESPN interview. This is great. Darrell and I are sitting and watching Kirk Gibson. And they say, Kirk, what about that 84 Tiger team? You guys were 35-5 to start the season. Arguably one of the greatest teams in the history of baseball. May God strike me dead. Kirk said right in front of Darrell, it was so great to be sitting there with him. He said, you know something? Whoever, I think it was Costas or somebody like that interviewing him. He says, you know what the difference was? He said, we got Darrell Evans in the offseason. That is what made the difference. I will never forget that. Now, what are the odds that Darrell and I would just come home from having dinner, turn on the TV, hear Kirk Gibson being interviewed, and say, Darrell Evans is the difference. Do you remember that, Darrell?
Yeah, man, I didn't even know the money had gotten to him by then. So.
Yeah.
But that's the stuff. Yeah, it's like that's what we. Isn't it great that we're going to expose and how people really think about each other? The sports has so much to give. There's no negative. Only one team wins the last game of the season. Doesn't matter. But man, getting there excites millions and millions of people. And they start getting interested. They start going, who's this guy? Never heard of Casey. Okay, well, I mean, I used to get this all the time. I was like, Hank Aaron, who's that? You were on base. Who's Hank Aaron? But then you go to the next 99 people, and they're like going, who was that idiot that didn't know what the hell was going on? So, it's constant every day. And it's so exciting for me now, especially, we got guys that are passing, guys that are gone, my age or younger. But man, every time they do, you of course, respectful and sad. But man, you always go back to something wonderful about them. And what was that? Baseball. They represented the game the way it was supposed to be. They played the game the way it was supposed to be. I tell people all the time now, it's like, they ask, okay, do you guys watch the games all the time? And I don't know. I don't talk to everybody. Well, a lot of guys are like, not really, because it's changed different. And then the other, and then somebody will go, what do you mean? It's gotten better. It's like, okay, so it's not because it can't get much better. There's not enough talent. There's superstars in every era. The better ones. Has the typical player gotten better? In any sport? Not really, because you just can't be. It's just impossible. You can't lift more weights. You can't go run. You can't run faster. You can't do this. You can't hit farther. None of that stuff. So when you realize that this has been going on forever, and we get to go back and maybe think about the guys that were doing it before I hated the Dodgers,
Well, just think about Darrell. Think about Darrell's.
Bob, just let's do exactly that. Let's go back to Casey. One of the things that made him as great as he was when he was manager, and we have a picture here of him. Getting signed with the Yankees. And Bob, you had mentioned earlier about the connection between the Boston Braves, and the Yankees, and the decision made. And Casey had played in 3 World Series, but when he managed the Yankees from 1949 to he 5 consecutive World Series championships. It's never been done before, and this is where the legacy comes in. Bob, do me a favor and just explain if there's anything that he mentioned about what a difference in 1949. With a pretty good team, he becomes the manager, and the rest is history. For 5 straight years, they win the World Series against the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Giants, the Dodgers again, and then what was the last one against the maybe the Dodgers? And then they play again in 1960. The run that he had as a manager is legendary, and basically most of the time you see him sitting on a bench with his legs crossed, and watching these just guys go out there and just doing their job. Explain a little bit about that, Bob, if you don't mind.
Well, yeah. Now think about this. He won 10 pennants in 12 years with the New York Yankees. 10 pennants in 12 years, and there was no playoffs back then. It was just a 154 game regular season and the World Series. So that's an impressive record. I don't know if anybody's ever won 10 pennants in 12 years, and he won 7 World Series. So, but Casey always uh, had the guy, his guys around him. He had guys he liked around him. I really always heard he didn't get along with DiMaggio that well, because as I was talking to Harper the other day about, uh, now Harper played 11 years in the NFL, and you'd never know he was a peanut salesman because he's humble. He never talks about it. He never brags about it. He was a long snapper, and we had James Toney on the other day, and he said, that's one of the hardest jobs in football. But do you think Harper ever talks about it? No. And it's the same thing with Darrell Evans. That's why I've always said I love humility, and Casey was humble. He was fun to be around. He loved the game. He loved his players. He had Moose Scarron, who he sent to Arthur Murray dance studios to learn to work his feet better at first base. You know, he had all these guys. He had Yogi Berra. You know what he used to say about Yogi Berra? He used to, if I heard him say this once, I heard him say it 1,000 times. He'd say, they say he reads comic books. He played like a goddamn genius for me. You know how many times I heard him say that? And Yogi, sure, he was uneducated, but as baseball smart, he's like Darrell. He knew the game inside out. And if they had gold gloves back then, he would have won a lot of them because they didn't have them until 57. But the guy was, I say, the greatest catcher of all time. See, these reporters that say Johnny Bench is the greatest catcher of all time don't know who Yogi Berra was. Yogi Berra had 71 hits in World Series games. 71. Yogi Berra played on 11 World Championship teams. Yogi Berra was the MVP 3 times and was in the top 4 voting 6 years in a row. The top 4 voting 6 years in a row. Yogi Berra had a 285 lifetime batting average. Yogi Berra hit 358 home runs back when they weren't hitting them like they are today. Yogi Berra was a bad ball hitter. Yogi Berra was handled, Casey said he handled the pitching beautifully, as evidenced by Don Larson's perfect game in the 56 World Series. You could just go on and on and on and talk about him. And he was a great, on top of it, a great, humble guy. I used to say he was like a wooden Indian. You don't think Yogi Berra was at the Copacabana with Mantle and Ford and all those guys? You don't think Yogi Berra knew where all the bodies were buried? But Yogi knew nothing. He was like never said a word about anything. You never heard anything come out of his mouth other than, the baseball thing. And he
you
still
had to figure out what was coming out.
Yeah.
But you're right, Bob. That he was Casey's Stengel over again, I guess. I mean, if you look, we weren't there, but it seems like you're right. Yogi was Casey. Second coming of Casey.
They said Casey said he was his MVP, and his favorite player he ever managed, because he was Darrell knows this. A catcher's usually like quarterback involved. They're the ones calling the strikes, calling the balls. He had a great arm. Not too many guys stole off Yogi. They don't talk about that today because most people are dead that saw him play. So, but I mean, his granddaughter, they did a documentary which everybody should see about Yogi Berra. And his granddaughter said she couldn't believe when they had the 4 greatest living players, and they had Johnny Bench, Koufax, I think Hank Aaron, and they left Yogi out of that, But, he never got, why? And I always said this, his reputation as a clown, Yogi the Bear, all the funny statements, and this restaurant never does any business because it's always too busy. I mean, all these statements ruined his reputation as a player because people didn't take him seriously. They took him as a clown. And he was funny. But that didn't take away from his greatness as a baseball player.
Yeah, he could sure hit a fastball, couldn't he? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
He was a guy that, and you said 11 championships. Are you
Casey
kidding?
had me on the bench, Harper. I don't know how old. In 59, I was 13 or 14 years old. He had me on the bench at the 59 All-Star game in the Memorial Coliseum. I'm sitting on the bench before the game with Casey Stengel. And in that game, Yogi Berra hit one over the right center field fence, which was like a mile away because the screen was 250. right field was, they called it a burial grounds for fly balls. He hit one over the fence for a home run. I'll never forget it as long as I live. Yogi Berra, who was 5'8", hit one way out of the ballpark in right field in the Coliseum. I'll never forget that.
Isn't it amazing? Have you ever heard a bad word about Yogi? Not
Never.
really. Maybe
No.
people, they, like you said, they laugh at him and all that, but they never said a bad word.
Never.
Same thing with Casey.
Yeah.
They make fun of him. Well, the Babe, they make fun of him. They thought they're a little worse. But think about that. People don't really, they never hate him. They never say something because maybe there's not much to talk about in that. It's all positive. It's like they're amazing in what they do.
Hey, I've always said Casey gave, let's face it, Darrell, you went to college. I never went. I took a semester at PCC and dropped out because I was drinking. And Casey took me, those 10 years with Casey made my life. Because my daughter says, Dad, did you go to college? She graduated from SC. And I said, no, Jenna, but 10 years with Casey was better than going to Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Stanford, SC. Those 10 years taught me everything. And then when he passed away, I started my own company representing athletes. And then that would have never happened if I hadn't had the 10 years with Casey. You know what I mean? And, all the people Darrell introduced me to. I had Phil and Joe Necro as a client. I had, a lot of other guys that Darrell introduced me to because they knew I knew Darrell, So, I mean, that's how it works. It's the people, that your friends that take care of you and take you along on the ride. I feel like I was on the ride with Darrell in his career. I feel like I was on the ride with Casey in his career. And I'm gonna show you guys a letter that's my prized possession, and I don't show it to many people. I have it framed in my office. This is a letter that Casey Stengel wrote for me. He got me a job with Gillette. He did shaving commercials for Gillette razors, Casey Stengel. So Bud Salatich was the president of Gillette, and Casey got me a job, and he wrote me a reference letter. And I want to show you this letter. This letter is on my wall. And that's Casey and I back in the day. And I don't know if you can read it.
You're gonna have to read it.
You can't read it?
No, it's a little too small. But didn't he have it was just a recommendation, to whom?
Yeah, this is what it says. It said, to whom it may. This is on Casey's stationery. Somebody offered me a lot of money for this. I didn't sell it. It says, to whom it may concern, I have known Bob Case all of his life. He has always been ambitious, hardworking, and honest. He has done work for me for many years as my business manager and has always done a professional job. He is especially good in dealing with all types or with all people and would be an asset to any company as he has great sales ability. I will be happy to verify the above anytime. I can be reached anytime on phone at 241-4041, Casey Stengel, 1663 Grandview, Glendale, California. It's all in his handwriting. And that, to me, says the kind of guy, for him to write a letter like that about me, is priceless,
And part of the legacy that he has is obviously for a number of reasons. If you look at the success that he had, again, let's go back to the Yankees and what he was able to do. The 49 World Series. Here's a picture of him with DiMaggio, obviously against the Brooklyn Dodgers. They played against them in a couple of World Series.
That's Chuck Dressen and him there in that picture.
On the left.
That's Walt Alston and him on the other picture.
Yeah, Walter Alston was just a young manager, and he's got he takes the Dodgers. They win the pennant there in the National League, and I know Darrell doesn't like that because we're teasing, but they got to go. And baseball itself was, the New York Giants. They had a World Series against them. They've got Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. I mean, everything is East Coast exclusive, pretty much. I mean, even Chicago, as much as they struggled during most of their franchise.
Hey, Harper, in those days, Harper and Darrell knows this. In those days, the World Series was different than it is today. I'm going to tell you why. It was played during the daytime. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now I remember I went to a Catholic school, and every inning the nuns would come in and tell us the Yankees are leading the Brooklyn Dodgers 3-1. Gil McDougall just got a hit. They would tell it. In other words, and you'd see guys digging ditches in the street, stopping to see what the score was. The whole world stopped when the World Series was going on during business hours, during school hours, today it's played where everybody can see it at night. But am I right, Darrell?
Yeah, and replay. So we couldn't remember that was part of it. You couldn't miss it. So you had to run home from school, or you had to beg. I remember bringing in in school a little tiny black and white TV, and holding the antenna up and everything so you could watch the game. But you couldn't really see it because it was going fuzzy. But it was just the point of it was so important. It like I said, baseball became so important because winning was what we learned how to do through our sports team. Yeah, hey man, this is the way how you do it. And then you're humble when you win. And that was right. Growing up was like, oh my gosh. I hated the Yankees too, by the way, Harper. I pretty much hated anybody I wasn't playing against. But that was, you didn't threaten them. You just didn't, you had that incentive to push against somebody else, of course.
Hey, there isn't a Chicago Cub fan anywhere that likes your Tigers, or they like
of course not.
The Brewers. They don't want anything to do with those people. You either love my team or you don't, and you either stand with me or stand opposed.
It reminds them of you. I should have won before you. Look at how lucky you won, and we haven't won. It's not fair. It was like, well, did we really feel sorry for the Cubs ever? Do we really feel sorry for the Red Sox ever? I don't know anybody that did. Of course, I never lived in Boston or Chicago.
Right.
I would imagine that, but even like in Chicago, Boston the same way. They hate the Yankees more than they love the Red Sox.
Pretty much.
And it's like the White Sox, the Cubs. We hate the White Sox. We don't care what else is happening. So when you get to the point of finding somebody you can follow, the 58 Braves, who, like I said, I picked them because they were really good. They weren't winning then. And then they beat the Yankees.
57 and 58. Darrell, the Yankees won. The Yankees won in 58. It was 57 that Lou Burdett won 3 games.
Well, no, what I'm saying is in that era, the team, it was the best. We knew we were playing the best team. Just having the World Cup. Everybody got excited about our team. It was great. They played really good. They played probably to their level. Got everybody excited. But then after they got beat by a better team, we all went back and went, okay, we still have fun doing it. We still look forward to getting better. That we maybe, what would happen if we won another game in 4 years? Yeah, the whole world was on fire. So that's the way it is in each individual city or area. And if you haven't been out there, you don't know that. And the problem was when we were growing up, all we heard about was the Yankees. We didn't hear about anybody else. Everybody else was second class. Yeah. Remember Bob? We used to talk about that all the time when they stole Roger Maris from the Kansas City. It used to be they make trades with Kansas City.
They call Kansas City their minor league team. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it was like obvious, but it was like, wow, that's not really happening. Well, we know what happened, but it was all about getting the people pumped up in the big places so they could spread out and show everybody else what it was really like. And then when you don't get to win very often, oh my God. Going to Detroit and winning in '84, one of the greatest sports towns in the world. and they won. And I was there. I was part of it. Oh my God. I had no idea what it was going to be like. It wasn't just the city. It was the state. It was the area. It was the pushing back against everything else. It was the unbridled, like we've just seen, that joy no matter what. Yeah, I really hate the White Sox, but the Tigers won, so I kind of feel good. We are lucky to be around there, and these guys showed the way. I mean, Casey was the one, wasn't he? He was on all the covers of all the newspapers, and everybody, and most people thought it was because he was a joke, because he was a clown. Not, we didn't think that. The rest of us, we didn't think that clown won 11 times in a row. And everybody loves him. And then you find out, oh, he was a pretty good player too. So it was an awakening in a way. And it continues for me, because every time, like Bob said, I used to, my dad, mom, and open up the baseball encyclopedia. Look at this guy. No, I never heard of him. Oh man, look what he did and all that kind of stuff. And then the next day it was like, oh, let's find another guy. So it was finding joy in something and be able to now look back and go all this time later and going, promoting it, because the new young people don't get to do it. They don't know what it's like. They don't know what it's like, right? I mean, like Bob, we grew up. When we grew up, first thing we did in the morning was look at the box scores.
Absolutely.
When I was playing AAA, my roommate Jack Twist and I, we had bets and everything. We had to know what was happening in the big leagues in the morning before we went down for breakfast. Because we would quiz each other, and it was like, we got to find out how do you do this. So it's been a great thing to bring back these people that started it all, or were there when it started, let's put it that way. And how lucky we were to be around them. If they were Dodgers, I may not have liked them as much. But, it was, I didn't like them that much because they were Yankees, that's not true either. But it's like they represented what we wanted it to be like, or what we dreamt about it being like. What's it like to have your name on your picture on this card, and people want you to sign it, and then they tell you how good you were. It's like, how do you dream about having something like that? And that's been going on for how long? 200 years now? Then they try to change it? No, it's not changing. It's where we go to when we need to be happy. We don't talk politics. We don't talk anything. We talk sport. Some people hate sport. That's kind of mind-blowing to me. But I guess they're probably not tuned in on this program ever. But if they did, they'd find out that it's a lot better. Just like we did in the World Cup. The people that didn't know nothing about it was like, but look at these people are going crazy. They're having fun. Oh my God, I got to find out about this. That's what baseball's been for the U.S. forever. You can go to a baseball game and not know nothing about a game, right? You can't do that. I mean, football you can, kind of. Not really. I mean, you got to be part of it and all that kind of stuff. You're supposed to pretend like you know everything. Baseball, you don't. Just, I know I'm going to go there and have a good time. So I'm glad we can glorify the people that did it for us, or that were the idols for us when we grew up. I wonder who there, Bob. Did you ever talk to Casey or Charlie Gill? Who were their idols?
I would say Casey's idol was a manager, John McGraw. That's the guy he talked about the most as influencing his career, even though he was his manager. Now you got to remember when he was a kid, it was I think they liked Honus
before
Wagner.
That, who was?
He talked about Honus Wagner a lot, but I think his real, if he had to say one person to single out that he looked up to in baseball, I would say John McGraw. Had as much to do with Casey's success as anybody. He was his mentor He was the guy that, like Eddie Matthews, is Darrell's mentor. Darrell wore number 40. He couldn't wear 41 with the Braves because it was a retired number. But he went with the Giants and the Tigers. He wore 41 in honor of Eddie Matthews, who was his idol as a kid and then his manager and mentor. You know what, Eddie Matthews? We'll talk about this when the Eddie Matthews, we do that. But you know what I used to love is Darrell tell me, Eddie Matthews said, son, just hang around me. Just stay around me. Eddie Matthews said that to him when he was a rookie. And he said he would take him out. This is amazing. And Eddie would have him in the batting cage, and he would pitch to him and throw at his head. And he would teach Darrell not to hit the dirt, but to dodge the ball with standing up because it was a sign of weakness to the pitchers if he hit the ground. So he would throw at Darrell's head in the batting cage and have Darrell not hit the ground. And, you know, just things like he would hit him 1,000 ground balls a day at third base. I mean, the guy was, you talk about an influencing guy, and that was Darrell's idol. What's the odds his idol ends up to be his number one mentor in baseball?
Aren't you told in life, never meet your hero, right? Don't ever meet your hero because he might disappoint you. And you got to go to work for him.
Wow. You know, I did hear that once, but I don't. I mean, to me, that was like I never believed that.
Yeah.
Because I always thought we were better. And we are. We're better at judging people. Right? That was. I mean, Harper, you know that. You had to learn about different guys. You had to know. You had to watch. You had to know which one you could say, do this, whatever, and all that. And it was like this superpower that we had that 95% of it worked out. The one time, the times that it didn't work out, it was like, my dad always told me, like, hey man, you know, respect, because he always called everybody yes sir and yes ma'am. He goes, you respect them until you don't. And when you find out, then you don't even get to talk to them. You don't need to be around because they're trying to take away. But that was like, and that's what I saw as I'm going up and different people respect it. I try to figure out why you respect that guy. Why, and this guy's not that great. So that was a learning project. We had to go through that before we got to the top, where we had to not go in the stands where people are yelling at us. You guys never heard that shit. We heard it all the time. You know? It's like, okay. So we had to learn how to channel into, okay, how would Casey handle this? Look at how he did. Everybody loves this guy. So I guess that's the way Hank there. Everybody loves him. I'm gonna how's he handle it? Pretty good. So we had to learn before we got there, or we would have been thrown out.
Let me ask you a question regarding that, Darrell. And I know I want to stay on Casey, of course, but people have asked me before. I know the difference between judgment, like a biblical judgment. I'm assessing you, and I don't think you're a good person, or I don't like you. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about assessing. For example, if you're going to go across your street and tell somebody how much your neighbor's house is worth, you have to assess it. You have to give a value to it, and that's based on what other homes or other appraisals are in the neighborhood or in the area. When I judge somebody, when I assess them, when I look at their feet and I go, this guy's got really good feet, he's got great balance, and he can catch, he can block, he can tackle, he can hit, he can field. I'm watching what he does. Is he light on his feet? Is he heavy? What kind of glove does he have? Does he have a smoothness with his backhand? Does he get rid of the ball quickly? You're assessing things to go, I got to compare myself to this guy. If I'm going to beat him out, and Bob, you know this from the Darrell Cheney interview that we did on a different show, I want to play, but how am I going to be better than Joe Morgan or Tony Concepcion or Cesar Geronimo or George? How am I going to get in the lineup when I'm not better than any of the guys that are out there? So the assessment, Darrell, is really important. Is what I'm saying make sense to you in terms of the difference between the two and how you were looking at, where I fit and what I can do? Go ahead and explain that for me.
Well, yeah, no, you're exactly right, of course. Until the bottom line is, in baseball, we have this saying, he's got five tools. Well, we're leaving out the best one. This.
Between the ears.
This is the only tool that we can improve so much. We can be better than anybody else with this tool over our head. There's nothing holding that back. Well, we can't be better. You can't be better than a 6'8" defensive end that's going to kill you. Of course not. But you can outthink him. You can outbox him maybe sometime. You can look for the tendency. Okay, and that's what for me it is. It's like the tendency. What's going to happen? And then I have to get enough experience maybe to take that chance of going, this guy keeps hitting this ball to my left. I'm going to move over 6 inches or a foot. And let's see if it works. So that's this. I'm going to take that extra base, not deciding halfway to the next base. I decided that 2 days ago, where I was like, oh man, this guy, he can't throw the ball. I'm speeding him up. I'm going to go there. So there was always that space. And like Darrell Cheney, who I played with, great friend of mine. He spells Darrell wrong, but that's okay. We were good playing. I don't know if you remember. We made a Redman commercial together.
Redman? Are you kidding me?
In Atlanta.
You had some smokeless tobacco back in those days?
They had us out on the field, and it looked like we were on the picnic or something. We were on the field, putting a little chaw on, and it was great. And D was great. And like you said, but he didn't. Like he said, okay, so how do I get as good? That's the only place you can go. Like you said. Okay, so what you did, I don't think too many people know about what it takes to be a long snapper or whatever. No, it's not. Nobody puts it down. They just don't know. And it's like, hey, I don't know if I don't know. I've never asked you, were you the first guy that dreamt about being a long snapper when you were 12 years old? I doubt it. But you wanted to play football. You wanted to get the court. But baseball's that's why I said. So you can go to the top, and what they all say is the hardest thing is making the big leagues. Because you can move your way up in all these other things until you get to the top. Going into business and kicking out some VP or some CEO, it's probably going to happen right away. That might in the future, but you got to learn how to do that. Baseball's just like that. So, and you don't have much time, so you've got to be prepared to do that. So it's not like because what happens at the top, when you're at the top of anything. The people at the top never forget when somebody else makes a mistake. It's not like you said, you're not really judging them right away because they know they're inexperienced. But when they do it the second time, there's no excuse anymore. So that was what I learned, or what everybody had to learn. You can make that mistake in the minor leagues and stuff. And then they come to the big leagues and make that mistake, and it's like, oh, nobody said anything to me. Nobody. It's like they used to. They used to tell you you're not going to make it if you make those mistakes.
Yeah.
Now it's like they make a mistake, give them a pat on the butt. Oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. Well, that's not the way we play.
And do me a small favor, Darrell, real quick. Let me interrupt by asking Bob. Bob did this the other night. Bob, that letter, and you mentioned this earlier, from Ty Cobb, Ty Cobb of all people, praising Casey for his decision making through the World Series. For him to recognize that. Bob, I don't want you to read the letter, but just, what was that influence on? You've got this letter. You said it was in green ink and you've got it somewhere. I don't want to ask for it now, but just the significance of what that meant to you in terms of when you're going to talk about a guy like Casey Stengel, to have someone like Ty Cobb go out of his way to praise another man in the business that he had been in his whole life, and as a Hall of Famer and hit 360, whatever the numbers are, they speak for themselves. But, for him to say what he did and the edification of, he's not just swinging from Casey's balls, excuse my expression. What he's doing is you did a great job. You impressed me. You did something that was outstanding, and I want to let you know it, young man.
Hey, Harper, would you? I'd be happy to read the letter. Would you like me to read it? It's really an amazing letter.
It's 4 pages. We're running kind of short on time, but just
no,
summarize.
He basically praised Casey. 4 pages, telling him, Casey, I hope you get time to read this, because I know after the season you're getting flooded with letters and everything, and I hope you take the time to read. This is Ty Cobb. This isn't some fan. This is Ty Cobb saying, I hope you get the time to read my letter. But I just want to tell you, and he used the word I never heard, I'm still feigning over your victory over the Milwaukee Braves. And why Fred Haney broke in under me, I'm rooting for the league that I played in, the American League. And I wasn't rooting for Fred Haney and the Milwaukee Braves. So, and he brags about how great Elson Howard was, that fine colored boy, and how great, and Yogi and Gil McDougall. He names all the players, but you were the one, Casey. You were the one with the brilliant decisions by letting Duran come in when he did, not letting Turley go too far. He goes through all the players and he said it was the greatest managing job ever. And he said, and you are a battler for the game that like no other. And I'm, blah, blah, blah. And how proud he was of Casey and everything. So, it really was.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but you know what? To me, isn't it amazing? Ty Cobb. Now we know a little bit more about Ty Cobb. We knew about him before. Never got to manage. Babe Ruth never got to manage. And yet, we just heard them. They were watching everything that happened in the game, even when they weren't playing.
Yep.
And they decided that no, we can't. I think it was. What do you think it was, Bob? It was because the players liked him too much. They didn't have control over the management. Well, I guess they talked about they couldn't control Babe Ruth. Oh, he might say something or what. Same thing. I guess they thought about Ty Cobb. I guess.
And Darrell, that letter was
nobody liked him. That was all bullshit.
That letter was written in 1958, and near the end of the letter, I finally figured out what he said. Oh, it's too bad about trespassing. He said he played the game the way it was meant to be played, and he never really knew what I thought of him. And there were others, how much I loved how he played. And he's talking about Tris Speaker dying. This is December of 1958. He wrote this letter, stated. And I guess Tris Speaker passed away right at that time. And he's telling Casey, too bad about Tris passing, and how he loved how he played the game. He said, although I never told him, I respected how he played the game. And there were many others like Tris. So it was very
he knew he was trying to compete with the best.
Yeah.
Right? Ty Cobb finally got to say it. At the time playing him. Then afterwards, they didn't get around each other well, so they could talk. But he couldn't. He had to get it out. And you think, when I was growing up too, it was funny because I had my dad and his friends and all that stuff. There was always that who's the best, all-time team and all that kind of stuff. And back when we were growing up, this speaker was he was mentioned, right? Now nobody even knows who he is. But to compare somebody from that era, you got different standards. Not worse, but how good a baseball player was. Well, if they've got the records and most of the thing, they probably got to be part of the group that's the best players. You would think. Right?
Hey, Darrell, that's why I
we
go
don't think
nuts.
that anymore.
I go nuts when I hear people say Ohtani's the GOAT. Are you kidding me? He's got a 278 lifetime batting average. Ted Williams hit 344 and hit 521 home runs.
Yeah, but Bob, remember when Ted went before Ted Williams' time? Everybody was going, "Oh, Tony Gwynn's as good as Ted." Like what? Nobody ever thought that, except the people that grew up at that time.
Yeah.
When it's like, okay, we get it. All right, but has that changed? No. More people would say Tony Gwynn now than they ever would. And it's like, Rod Carew, I'm not putting him down. 1-7 batting title. Was he better hitter than Tony Oliva and Harmon Killebrew on his own team? I don't know. So, but the good thing about it, there was a bunch of them. And there was different ways of doing things. And there was different ways of value. You know, I talk about that all the time. All I cared about was run production. And it was like, if I produced 200 runs, 100 RBIs, 100 runs scored, I was one of the best players in baseball. There was no doubt. And most of the time I didn't quite make it, but I knew that. Plus, they hit me third. They must have thought too. But, it wasn't, that's not why I did what I did. It was to compete with the Ty Cobbs and the Babe Ruths and the Hank Aaron's and the Eddie and the Mike Smiths and all. Well, yeah, once in a while, I guess, turns out over a bunch of time, they were better than me in certain areas, again. But that next at bat, that next snap, were they better than you if you did it right? No. So we could compare ourselves only when we got to that level. And then when we got that level, there's another level.
Hey, Harper, when
Darrell's the greatest player of all time, or maybe one of them, maybe one or two or three, every single day, not just once or every 2 weeks or a month.
When Darrell Evans retired, he'll never tell you this, but I will. He was number 6 in the history of baseball for walks, 1,605 bases on balls. He led the major leagues in walks on 2 or 3 years with over 100 walks. So he not only hit 414 home runs, he had a great eye at home plate. I never saw him. He had the best pitch selection. Amazing stat.
You know what? It's funny, Bob. Nobody asked me how I did that. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, Bob and I talk about this too. It's like, they played a long time, never on the disabled list, and all these guys who get hurt now.
Darrell, he holds a record
that they would ask Cal Ripken and Steve Garvey and Billy Williams and Tony Perez and me. How'd you play that long?
Well, how about he's the only one of all those guys? Cal Ripken was on the disabled list. All those guys, he played 21 years and never on the DL.
Right. But what I'm saying is the longevity, you can get on the list. I don't know. Judge is on the list now because you have broken ribs. I don't know how you got there. So
these guys get a hangnail.
There's been other guys that have broken ribs.
Well, let's go back to Casey, if you don't mind. Let's round this a little bit up. In 1949, I think what really the legacy that he had, if you look at his managerial record in Brooklyn, 3 years there, never finished higher than fifth. Never finished higher than fifth in the 6 years that he was with Boston. His first year with the Yankees, they win the World Series. 49, 50, 51, 52, 53. He wins 5 in a row. Unbelievable. Never finished in second until 1954. They finished second in the American League. They go to the World Series. They lose to Brooklyn in 55, and that's the Dodgers' breakthrough. They win the World Series again in 1956. In 57, they lose to Milwaukee, and then they beat Milwaukee in 58. They finish third in 59, and then in 60, they lose to the Pirates, and Casey's done. His record there was 1,149 wins, 696 losses. His winning percentage with the Yankees, 623. An amazing career, and I think, guys, if you can allow me to just say this, that solidifies him in terms of the managerial strength, plus his playing days. Obviously, we talked a lot about that. But forever, he's going to be one of those guys. He is a Yankee hero forever, which means he's an American hero forever. It just transcends time. If he had done it in Chicago, they couldn't make enough statues for him. Or if it happened in Philadelphia. Give me your thoughts first, Bob, if you wouldn't mind, about, you've been with the man and know the humbleness, but knowing when I got to New York, I just basically held everything together, and those guys played well, and I got to reap the benefit of that. I got to smoke 7 victory cigars. What was the impact of Casey's career on the Yankees in terms of just solidifying himself as one of the best, regardless, forever?
Okay, Harper, I'm going to tell you a little something very interesting. Casey, when he managed the Brooklyn Dodgers, you have no idea how many players came out of there, like Ernie Lombardi. His catcher with the Brooklyn Dodgers when he was managing was Al Lopez. Now, Al Lopez, in his 12 years in the American League, was the only manager that beat Casey. He was managing the Cleveland Indians in 1954, and they beat Casey. And he was managing the 1959 Chicago White Sox in the American League, who beat Casey. And they were best friends. And they had oil wells together, Al Lopez and Casey. But what I want to tell you about, he loved New York. Casey was offered a job in 1961 to manage the Los Angeles Angels before they hired Rigney by Gene Autry. Casey turned down the job because he was the vice president of Valley National Bank in Glendale, and they had 7 branches. So he was in the banking business, and he wanted to relax. But when the New York Mets were formed in 1962, he loved New York. And who hired him? George Weiss. So he went right back to New York. He would have never gone back into baseball if it wasn't for Weiss and New York. And he loved the Essex House. That was his home away from home, right across from Central Park. And he would go in and get his shoes shined. There was a black guy that would shine shoes in the wet restroom there. And Casey would sit and talk baseball with the shoe shine guy for a half hour after he finished shining his shoes. So he would talk to the cab drivers about who was pitching tonight, who was this. He loved New York, and I think that's because of all the fame. He could not go anywhere in New York, nowhere, without being mobbed.
He never had to pay for anything in New York.
Never. We'd go to Toots Shores in New York, and everything was on the house. Everything was a big hangout for baseball players called Toots Shores, and everything was on the house. And we'd go to Dempsey's restaurant. Jack Dempsey loved Casey Stengel. Everything is on the house. Everything is on the house. There's Edna right there, who was the most beautiful, classy, elegant. I always said, think about this. Casey was a tobacco-chewing, hell-raising bachelor when he met Edna. Hanging out with the players, drinking. He met her when he was 30 years old. She was a classy, elegant, designer clothes, had her hair manicured all the time, came from money. Her parents owned her family owned most of Los Angeles back in the day. They were pioneers of Los Angeles. And she was like, Casey was a diamond that needed to be polished. Edna polished him and helped him and form him into who he was, because he would never do anything to embarrass Edna. That was one of the greatest love affairs I've ever witnessed in my life. 50 years. Unfortunately, she got Alzheimer's the last couple of years. But what a classy, elegant woman. And I'm sure they're together right now. For whatever reason, they never had children. And maybe that's why Casey I felt like the kid he never had. He always treated me like that. But the bottom line is I loved Edna, and just like, just a beautiful woman. And I've always said that they always say behind every successful man, there's a woman. she was like a woman that was really, really helped um, Casey a lot in his life. That's all I can tell you. He was already a major league player when he met her, but she helped him a lot. I mean, Darrell had a wife, one of his wives, Diane, who I love to this day, and so does Darrell. She helped Darrell a lot, even though he'd already achieved the success. She was a baseball fan. She loved the Detroit Tigers. He met her in Detroit, and what do they say? All we have are memories, and that's when Darrell, in my opinion, was the happiest guy in the world. There's always so much pressure on being a major league player and all the bullshit that goes around it. And I know all the stories, but I like to remember Diane as Darrell's Edna. You follow me? That's how I kind of look at that. And so, and she was a beautiful girl and still not too hard on the eyes, still a beautiful lady. But and we all have little angels in our life that come and they go and they come and they go. And that's what I've always said. I've been blessed. Casey was an angel to me. You realize I would have probably spent the rest of my life in prison if I hadn't met Casey Stengel. Because believe me, when I met him, I wasn't going the right way, and Darrell knows that. I was not going the right way. I think it was my love of baseball that saved my life. You know what I mean? And Bo Belinsky and Sam McDowell getting me sober 42 years ago. I would have been out of here 30 years ago if it wasn't for them. So, I'm just grateful for all the angels, and Darrell's been an angel to me. Are you kidding me? The people, he let me enjoy the ride with him. I enjoyed the whole ride to this day, right with Darrell.
Was it a mistake to take the Mets job, or it didn't matter?
It was the best thing. Casey, his numbers retired in New York. They loved it. He was the face of the New York Mets. He was. The reporters would come up after him and lose, and there was a book it's titled by Maury Allen, written, "Can anybody here play this game?" was Casey's quote. They had marvelous Marv Throneberry. They had Roger Craig, who was 3-24 for the Mets. They had all these has-been players that they got, and there's just a ton of them. And Casey made it fun. The players, the reporters mobbed Casey after the games. He was the whole face of the franchise. Casey was the face of the Mets, not any ball player. Believe me, he was the face of the Mets, and he made it a laughable, fun thing. It was fun to follow the Mets. It was fun because of Casey having jokes, doing this, doing that. He was hilarious. Casey was this is one of my favorite stories. Casey was managing the Yankees, and they had a pitcher named Art Ditmar. Okay, this game was on national TV, on black and white TV. Casey went out to talk to Ditmar. He walked a couple guys. He went out to talk to him, right? Went back in the dugout. Didn't pull him out. The next pitch, Ditmar throws a ball, and the guy hits a foul ball in the upper deck. I never saw this before. He had a foul ball in the upper deck in left field. Casey went out after the foul ball and pulled him out of the game. That was one of the funniest things I ever saw. He had a foul home run in the upper deck. Casey went out and yanked him out of the game.
In the hardest place probably in sports to please people, you got an expansion team, and you got to bump them up and go, they might win the pennant. Well, everybody, even the players on the team are going, well, that'd be a miracle if that happened. We made some trade. And he made it fun for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
The Mets fans, the Mets and the Yankees fans can't be any different than any place else in the country or in the world. Right? I mean, the Mets are, they're pissed because they don't win, and they'll go up and down everything. The Yankees kind of don't do that. But who's the face of the Mets? Still.
Hey, Harper,
it's a happy-go-lucky, fun thing. All the players that played there all loved it. The fans loved him and everything. And it's like, how did you find a guy like that? And like your story, Bob, how do you lure him back into the game? At that, you didn't lure him back into the world champion New York Yankees. You lured him back into the game for a brand new franchise that's not the most forgiving. Let's put it that way. And he thrived. Like, he made it great. I mean, how can you be better than that?
Think about this. After he quit the Mets, I heard he had too many drinks and he was showing somebody how to slide. This is a funny story. In 1965, he was out drinking at night and he showed somebody how to slide and he slid into a couch and broke his hip. That was the end of his career with the Mets. Now, let me tell you this.
When we believe that.
It's the first time in the history of the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown where they waived the rule. They waived the rule and voted him in the Hall of Fame in 1966. He didn't have to wait 5 years. They waived the rule. What does that tell you about Casey Stengel? He retired in 65. They waived the rule and he went in the Hall of Fame in 66. Two guys went in the Hall of Fame together, Ted Williams and Casey Stengel. And Ted Williams, I loved. He loved Casey Stengel. Ted Williams was on an interview on a documentary where he says, in baseball, you had Keenshaw Mountain Landis, you had Babe Ruth, and you had Casey Stengel. Out of Ted Williams' mouth on an interview, you can probably Google it and find it. But that's what Ted thought of Casey. And the two of them went in the Hall of Fame together in 66, and that was such a great thing to see. Just no other Hall of Famers, just those two. It was great.
Tremendous class. And then, for obvious reasons, during the final years, Bob, you got to be with him daily. The demands on him from a baseball perspective, going to old timers games, speaking at conventions with doctors, just being a ambassador of the game. What was that like in terms of your mind's eye, watching the admiration of everybody going, you know what, you're in the twilight of your life. We don't want to ask too much time, but can you give us an hour, or can you give us 45 minutes, or can you give us 90 and just tell us a couple of fun stories?
He was doing, Harper, he was constant. He was actually vice president of the Mets until he passed away in 75. He was vice president. Even though he was not managing, they gave him the vice president title, and he was very interested in the Mets. They asked his advice on different things. Dutch Willing, his best friend, was the head scout, and Harry Minor, his other protege, who he liked, he was the head of scouting for the Mets. So they were over at the house all the time, but he was always busy. He did a dog food commercial. He did all kinds of stuff. He did Gillette commercials. He did this, he did that. He was constantly on the go, and he loves going to spring training every year. He'd go to spring training. They named the field where the Mets trained Casey Stengel Field in Florida. And so they, that was one of his favorite things, to go to spring training every year, even after he was retired. I would take care of his house in Glendale, and he had to go to spring training. I'd live in his house for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So, but the point being, he was always busy. He was always going to events. He didn't turn down much. He loved baseball so much. So that's when he met Darrell for the first time. He was speaking at the Roger Young Auditorium at the Baseball Association dinner they had every year. Chuck Stevens was the head of the Ball Players Association, and they had this annual dinner every year, and Darrell and Casey were on the dais sitting next to each other. So, but he would never turn down. He loved old ball. You know how many checks I saw him write? This is something that a lot of people don't know. I saw him pay for the funerals of ex-teammates. I saw him give widows. I wrote the checks to widows of ex-players that were his teammates. Casey was worth millions, by the way. He was no chump. I'll tell you, he had oil well investments. He had owned bank buildings, owned banks and everything. But he was very smart with business. And Edna's sister taught him what stocks to invest in. May Hunter was her name. It was Edna's sister, who was a very well-known lady that lived in Malibu. She was telling him what stocks to buy and what's this and that, and he can invest in all that. But I'm going to tell you, he was smart as a whip. People used to think he was a clown. That was an act. That Stengelese was an act. If a reporter said, "Hey, Casey, what do you think of DiMaggio?" He'd go, the Italian guy, he's from San Francisco, and he had two brothers that played, and he'd go all the way around for 5 minutes, and he never told you what he thought of DiMaggio. You got it? So, and that was called Stengelese. Hey, Casey, what do you think of this picture for the? And you go, we got to talk. He had his own language called Stengelese, but he never used that around me. he'd say, he talked as clear as we're talking on this podcast with me. So it was all an act. It was a way to not to get around the question. If a reporter asked him something he didn't want to answer, he'd go through all this whole plethora of stuff. It was hilarious. The players actually the press actually got a kick out of it. You can Google Stengelese, and you'll see it's his own language he had. And it's when he didn't want to answer a question directly.
Yeah, the quotes and everything like that, maybe not the same amount or the depth in terms of humor as Yogi Berra, but very similar to that. Darrell, your experiences later on in life, what have you learned to value about a guy that loved the game as much as he did, was a spokesman and ambassador for baseball, but also a guy that as a player, as a manager, he was successful at every level, even though he was with a team that never finished higher than 10th out of 10 teams in the East with the Mets. He still, like you mentioned just a moment ago, he made it fun, and he made the best of what he had. He had no talent around him. He had a guy that Roger Craig loses 24 games in a season. Why is he even there? Because he is. That doesn't matter. But what were some of the things that were important for Casey's legacy in terms of making an impression on a big leaguer like yourself?
Well, most of the time, you look at. I mean, you don't know the other managers, coaches a lot of times, especially when you're young. But then we all knew him. I mean, we all knew he was around. He's an intimidating figure. You don't go up to the head coach or the head guy and pretend like you're best friends right away. You kind of try to figure him out, but it was so obvious everybody was having a good time. Nobody was talking bad about his team because they all, just like you said, hey, you don't have enough talent or anything, it's not his fault. But it was always his anticipation that he was going to make things better. So every guy that ever played for him that I ever met, oh my God, they couldn't say. They just said they gushed about it. They go over the other dugout all the time. They'd be sitting over there talking, before and after, or whatever, and all that. So you could see that. So it wasn't. He didn't have to come in and be the savior or whatever. They were just starting out, but at least they knew what they were getting. And so they embraced him right away. And you look back and go, hey, the right place at the right time. Because if they would have brought somebody else into that situation, doesn't matter who they were, probably, unless they're Casey Stengel, there would have been a lot of negative stuff that would have rubbed off. It would have, one of the things that happens, especially when you get traded or you're a free agent, you're not necessarily like that. You like where you were, but then when you're going to go somewhere else, you see what it's like, and you see who's in charge and how they run and how the players do. One of the great things about playing first base, although I love third much better, but playing first base was I got to talk to the players. After a walk, hit, whatever. And, you can mention kind of anything. Sometimes you know what time it is not to say anything. They're pissed, and we've been all been through it. But so many times you hear what it's like over there. How you guys doing? You okay? Well, you know what? It's great. Yeah. The man's is great. Coach is good. We got a chance. We can get better and all that. Instead of, man, we suck. And I suck. And there's nothing we can do about it. And so he was that, not the only one, but he was the one that was a constant. Everybody wanted to tell you a funny story about Casey. One like.
You want one of his funniest lines, Harper? You got to hear one of his funniest lines ever. And he actually really liked Bobby Richardson, but this is funny. It shows you the sign of the times. Everybody drank back then and smoked, right? All the players did. 90% of them, I would say. Right, Darrell?
Yeah.
Even in Darrell's era. Okay, so a reporter said to him one time, I went nuts laughing because I was right there when he asked him. He said, "What did you think of Bobby Richardson?" Now, Bobby Richardson was a very religious guy, and he's still living, by the way, and that's probably why, because he was religious, didn't smoke or drink. And Casey said, "What do I think of Bobby Richardson?" He said, "He didn't smoke, he didn't drink, he didn't swear, he didn't chase women, and he can't hit a curveball."
It's a funny way to get to that. But what a scouting report that is. But that's well.
He was just being funny, though. You understand? He really.
Well, of course he was, but see, he was telling everybody how how people are.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, nobody played without doing something that somebody else didn't like. But it was all about figuring out yourself how to get the most out of yourself. Somebody had some excesses, maybe, and that's what the manager is. Take care of that, bring that up. But he was telling everybody, was like, people do things differently. Plus, he had done it, all the experience, and now he's like going, wasn't he kind of saying, Cap, he's not having as much fun as he should have. Yeah, he can't hit a curveball, so he should be having fun at something else, right?
Well, he's still my guy, right? In spite of the fact he doesn't smoke or drink or
Yeah,
whatever, he's
sure.
still my guy. He's my guy, right? He's my
Well,
second
yeah,
baseman.
well, as a manager, the head coach, you got no control over. I mean, maybe now there's a little bit more, but it's like you got what you got. You make it better. And hope that the other team's not making it even better, where you can't win. But he made it fun. He made baseball fun.
Absolutely.
I mean,
That's it.
Harper, he made everything fun.
He made the Mets fun.
Well, yeah. That's pretty hard to do in New York. They're still yelling. The program you see right now, they're all still bitching. Well, the Knicks won, but okay. Anyway. So, but he was given to us. I look at it that way. He was given to us so that we couldn't just bash the players. He wouldn't allow it. He made players human. He made players feel good about themselves. And even Bobby Richardson. He's all good and all these other, but he can't hit a curveball. Well, he wasn't the only one. He's an all.
Yeah. Bob, final thoughts. You were with him forever during his dying days, so to speak, but his legacy and what it meant to you. Give us a perspective on Casey Stengel and his not only his life, but what he's meant to you since. You've quoted him on numerous occasions.
Growing up, a kid that loved baseball, I feel like I was working for God. You understand? I felt like I was privileged to be in God's grace. And in a way I was, because God set the whole thing up. I didn't do it. God set it up. And I was so honored to be with him. And I was honored to be with him. I was with him the night before he passed away. It was at the Glendale Memorial Hospital. I'll never forget it. And the playoffs were going on. It was in September of '75. He died September 30th. I think the Pirates were in the playoffs, as I recall. And he was in bed. And they were saying that we had the game on in the hospital, and they were saying the national anthem. And he said, "Bobby, can you help me up?" He said, "I want to stand one more time for the national." He said, "I want to stand one more time for the national anthem." And he was dead the next day. And I remember driving on the freeway, and it was all over the news and headlines in the paper and everything. It was, but he'll always be a part of me my whole life. so will Darrell's mom and dad, and so will Darrell, all the beautiful, beautiful friends that I've had in my life. And Harper, you're one of them now, you know. So I'm just grateful to have lived the life I've had. I thank God every day for the beautiful people He's put me around and is still doing it. And Dean Chance used to say, "We're too old to make new friends." Well, Harper, you're a new friend, and I'm so grateful to have you in my life. And you know, I feel like that. I always say God is good. God is good, and good people are God. My German shepherds are God. God is good, and goodness comes through God. And I think He gives us remind. We have devils on earth too, and we know all about them. But I I choose to try to be around good people, which I was so fortunate coming from where I came from, 3 stints in juvenile hall, reform school, to be around good people that were my role models that lifted me up. And that's what God kind of does to us. He lifts you up, and I've had them around me my whole life, or I wouldn't be here talking to you guys, obviously. So I'm grateful to do this and honor Casey, and thank you, Darrell, for helping me honor him, and Harper for being a part of honoring him. So it's a great thing, and I hope some people will, enjoy hearing about what we've talked about.
Darrell, final thoughts from you.
Well, how am I going to follow that up? But I've been lucky to know Bob for my whole life. And he was like, and not just my brother, but he was a son to my parents because he loved baseball. He was so involved. But Casey was, I don't know. Individually, I didn't know him like Bob, but I knew what he represented. And it wasn't, nobody even tried to stop it. It was like, oh, yeah, we're going to have fun with him and everything. And then we got Yogi and all that. But it's still there. And so, I mean, what you said about him wanting to get up and stand up for the national anthem, that guy, I didn't expect that. But no, I've got a picture of me that I'm one of my most proud pictures is standing in the outfield my last year, running my sprint before playing with the Braves. And the national anthem usually come on 5 minutes, 10 minutes before the game, or whatever. And sometimes it's not, doesn't maybe not the right word. You get caught out there, but you're out there while they're playing national anthem. And I realized, after a while, I was like, this is supposed to happen. This gave me an opportunity every single day. I got to listen to the national anthem and honor my country and be thankful for it. And I could talk, and at the same time, I stood at attention because I'm a Marine. And I got to talk to God or my parents after they passed, or my dad after they passed, in front of everybody. And it wasn't about me, but I was understood how much I representing that meant a lot. And I've had a lot of comments about that and asking me about that and all that. And I always remember that my oldest son Derek was a bat boy and player or whatever, and coach, and we coached together. And I remember that one of the best stories he ever was talking to somebody else, and he goes, "Let me tell you, standing in a major league dugout with all these guys, and what do they all do? They all get out on the top step, stand at attention, and thank God for where they're at, and they honor their country." And when he so that was what I guess learned, loved, knew that you're an example for people, just like Bob was going, and how great it is to be able to do that. And at the same time, I got to play forever. So I wanted to know how Casey did it. I wanted to know how Hank did it, how Eddie did it. I was lucky enough to be around it, and Casey will always be that. Everybody, and to be around Bob, who was around Casey. So it's kind of a full circle kind of deal in a way. Look at those pictures behind you, Bob. Nobody liked you, but they took pictures.
They didn't have cell phones. Hey, Darrell, they didn't have cell phones back then either. That's what's really amazing.
I know. We used to laugh at you all the time because you had the little camera, wasn't a Polaroid, but the little one-shot cameras all the time. Oh, Bob, stop and quit, and then ends up you had all these beautiful memories. So Casey was a memory maker who will be that way forever. Nothing better than that.
And we certainly appreciate his contribution, not only to the game of baseball, but just to life, the way he lived it. Charles Dillon Stengel. As Bob said, KC, who was from Kansas City, was the nickname the players gave to him way back when he was a young kid, from July 30th, 1890 to September 29th, 1975. Here's a man that if I can quote a title from General George Doolittle's book, If I Should Ever Be So Lucky Again. Here's a man that got to be a major league player, and Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth and Walter Johnson and Cy Young and guys that he grew up playing with and against. And then he managed the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Boston Braves, the New York Yankees, and the New York Mets. And he won world championships with the Yankees.
Hey, Harper, how about he batted against Babe Ruth in the 1916 World Series? It was the Brooklyn Dodgers, and the Boston Red Sox, and Babe Ruth was pitching for the Red Sox against Brooklyn. Go on.
And up until the mid-1950s, he could say, "Hey, Babe, I fouled one off against you. You weren't that good." Just to the ability to share stories like that. It's just an amazing legacy, and we're glad that we can share. So I want to thank Darrell Evans for the idea. I want to thank Bob Case for putting this together. And our show is called Baseball Legends of the Past with Bob and with Darrell. We want to thank you for being a part of it. Today's guest has been Casey Stengel, and we want to say thank you to everybody who's been able to watch. We appreciate it. If you like the show, please subscribe and tell a friend. We'll be coming back with other shows with other legends, and in the meanwhile, I want to say thank you for